Transmitting signal.
Five minutes?
No, 5 seconds. We're live now.
Oh, sweet.
Perfect
start.
Perfect start. Hello, everyone. As you can tell from my voice, it's a little bit off. So Saber's actually going to be doing a lot of talking today. But I had said I would want to start this show today, and I didn't want to bump that. So welcome, everyone, to the first episode of Measured Response. Excuse me. We're hoping to do this as a bit of a call-in style show. Though for today, we've got a lot of preloaded takes, and we're hoping, though the technology may not line up for today, to be able to play pre-recorded questions for people that can't attend live. But the goal is basically going to be we're going to, vamp, fill some time, talk about whatever we've been doing at the top of the show, while we give people a chance to show up in the Discord and share questions and hot takes they have about the meta, about standard, about Netrunner, about, whatever kind of things they think we might have something interesting to say about. We'll pull a handful of people every show, and then we'll have you come on to talk with you about your take or your question. For, most questions, we're going to try and aim to have about a 10 or so minute discussion. And then that will kind of be the show. There'll probably be some long questions. We'll have some variety of things. I don't know. I feel like I'm doing a bad job of describing things. Safer, could you think of things I'm forgetting to talk about up at the top here?
Might be helpful to introduce yourself. Briefly, for those of you who clearly have no idea who you are.
Yeah. If you somehow made it to this first episode on my channel with zero publicity and don't know who I am, hi, my name is Jeff, also known as Ysengrin. I am a long-time Netrunner player. I became involved in NSG and the organized play back in like 2020-ish, 2021, 2020-ish, I think, and have been kind of doing lots of different OP and now other things at NSG as well. And I also at some point started making Netrunner content and videos and stuff. So yeah, Safer, could you introduce yourself for the stream?
Sure. Safer, he, him. I am part of NSG, and I came back to the game after a long break from it to actually join the dev team, and now I lead the dev team and the format curation team for Standard, and on steering committee. And yeah, overall Crim apologist, Crim enthusiast, Crim enjoyer, whatever you want to say.
Oh, I should probably also say, yeah, I'm a diehard like Shaper HB combo player, while acknowledging that those are some of the worst things to be good in Netrunner. So you know, you can always get a nice little roast on me for that.
It's cool. Together we create one full Anarch player.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm gonna post a link to the Discord server in the chat in just a second.
I beat you to it.
Oh, okay. Fantastic. Wait, I don't see a link in that one because I don't think you can post links in my YouTube thing right now.
Oh, really?
Because YouTube auto swallows it. Yeah. So
yeah, I would do that. Okay, fair.
I will.
So today we do have a couple of written takes. So I'll basically read some of them off and you know, tell you who they came from. This is all from the Measured Response podcast server. So definitely join it if you would like to give takes either for future episodes or if you want to try to call in on this one. Because this is new technology and because it's been a rough week for Jeff and figuring stuff out, I think we're going to try to take at least one caller during this first hour-long call. But we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. For reference, I got quite sick on Sunday to the point where I slept from noon to 7 a.m. the next day. And then my daughter and wife also got sick. And so it has been a pretty wild week here. And then today the dog went to the ER. Dog is doing fine now. We're all doing better. But yeah, it's been a week where I was wildly less productive than I thought I was going to be. Yeah.
Sweet. Should we get into it?
Yeah, let's get into our first preloaded question.
Sweet. So AnalyzeChris asked, with powerful yet situational cards like Underdome Irregulars and Perfect Recall, do you think Vantage Point is pushing Netrunner toward more synergy-based decks, or do you think Grey Goo value will still be on top? Do you want to start us off here?
That's interesting. To be honest, in part because I've been so sick, I have not had the time to fully digest the impact of all the Vantage Point cards. I think Netrunner as a game kind of inherently has especially on the runner side, a super strong Grey Goo default. So I don't know. I'm kind of like, I'd be surprised if Vantage Point was able to actually move the lever on that in a way that like there was no Grey Goo deck on the runner side that was very good. I think it's just like systemically it's so hard to push against that. But
I think it's hard, but I think it's doable. Like you just need your synergy pieces to basically, you know, you need the sum of the parts to be greater than like the individual like pieces, right? And you need that to be better than the Grey Goo to be worthwhile. And the uphill battle is the fact that like it's just clunkier and it's less consistent because you need pieces to come together, and you need like, it's worse than like, it depends on like the order of your deck, right? You're more draw order dependent.
I
So
think
like it is an uphill battle, but
there is a funny thing where like at a certain point also, if the like synergy engine decks become good enough, they just redefine what value is, right? So
true.
it's like, it's like I feel like you have to go all the way to the extreme where like, oh, you have a mulch style deck that is like the best deck in format, and when that did happen, like, okay, that was not value Netrunner, right?
Yeah.
But like, if the whole game was like, oh, you have your mulch decks, your seb decks, your RE decks, and your dirt decks, for lack of I'm trying to think of a synergist heavy crim, and it's just like maybe
that's actually what I was going to ask. Like, what is there, like, aren't these like kind of different based off the different factions? Like, I think Geist maybe is the historical, like, your value in Crim, the synergy in like a Geist deck beat out like Grey Goo, but I feel like Crim is the most likely to devolve into Grey Gooiness. Shaper's the least likely, in theory, but then like the best performing Anarch decks, I think, like usually have some sort of insane synergy pieces with like, I was about to call it Graveyard, with like the heap and like heap interactions that like push out everything else.
I mean, like, Anarch was for, I don't know, like 2018 to 2026, just like almost like, that's maybe a little unfair, but like was just the Grey Goo faction, right? It was just like,
No, you mean it was the Hoshiko faction?
No, I mean, I'm talking like that era includes that included Value Val, included Big Max, like Hoshiko. Hoshiko inherited the Value Pile Anarch. There was, I guess it wasn't quite Value Wizard, but there was kind of a Value Wizard not quite predating all those things, but like Anarch for the longest time was just put the best 40 or put the best 30 odd orange cards in a deck, put the best 8 or so influence cards you can spend, and then boom, 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 you're done. Don't worry about any synergy between any two pieces.
Yeah, so I think, to get back exactly to Chris's question of, do we think that Grey Goo value will still be on top? I think the answer is, in the short term, yes, because Grey Goo bubbles to the top, if you will. But I do think that we'll see more synergy-based runner decks, in part because of the ban list, in part because of Vantage Point's design. And I think that actually what we've seen historically, like the world's winning like runner lists, man, this is biased towards the last like 2 years, so 2 or 3 years, but like it feels like Vampire Hosh, the Spree Ari list, those were all actually like pretty reliant on specific synergies and weren't actually doing like just reg value things.
I agree that like those two decks were more synergistic and synergy style pieces. I think those are both a little bit outliers of what the majority of those top cuts even were. And not to say, and like maybe if you ran back at those exact same worlds, like, oh, because those decks are known, they would be more popular. But like, someone, Eric in chat pointing out, we haven't defined what we're saying when we say Grey Goo. So I'll come back and define that for a moment after I finish this point, which is 2025 in San Francisco was like Grey Goo Lat as like the deck by and large. So like it's a little bit counter to that point to me. But yeah, Grey Goo, the way I've been viewing about it in this conversation, is this idea that it is you just take cards that make you the most value, as in the most credits, the most cards, with the fewest possible requirements on what other pieces are in your deck, or that have to be kind of like what other conditions have to be met for them to give you all of that value. So if you compare like daily cast, which just says get 5 credits across the neck in 4 turns, to like environmental testing, which says you can get 1 more credit, but you have to be able to take 4 installs of specific like hardware and program types. As like an example of like the daily cast is the grayer, gooier card to me. It's also grayer because it's neutral, but that's like not the central point, I guess, in the Grey Goo.
I kind of feel like that's where the gray comes from in Grey Goo. But yeah.
Yeah.
Shall we do the next take?
Yeah.
All right. So DaveC asked, Safer started talking about VP design goals for each faction when he was a daily cast guest, which is where the premise of the show came from, was when we were doing our daily cast episode. Then he realized he'd be giving too much away. Now that the set is out, what were the design goals of VP, and what would they have been if they started with 2020 hindsight of the elevation meta? This is a very hard question. And the actual thing that I realized after that daily cast episode was not just that I would be giving away too much and it was hard to talk about, but also that it's almost looking at the set from a different lens to look at it as like, what were the goals for each faction? And it was really more like, what are the goals for each card, and what does each faction what archetypes are available in each faction currently, and how do we like support them? So, we look at, we're going to use Anarch for a little bit here. We printed some Asa support. We printed some Ryu support. We printed, no, we're looking at Topan, and we're looking at ways to try to make sure that like Topan can get some love too. But we're like looking at all these different identities that weren't necessarily performing super well. We knew that Seb was doing well, and so we're like, we're not going to print cards specifically that would make Seb better, and we will try to print some other cards from these other underperforming like archetypes. So really, VP was designed in a very different way, and it was very focused on the individual slots of the cards rather than like, this is what this faction is doing, which of course is a historic departure and is not necessarily something that we're going to do again, but there's certain lessons that we can take from it and potentially make better sets and that basically marry these two like concepts.
Yeah, I mean,
how did you feel playtesting VP?
Yeah, I mean,
did you feel like this was like
Go
ahead.
Yeah, I mean, like if Andre and I are able to figure out, I'll probably have a whole spiel about my playtesting. I playtested only for maybe half, maybe a little bit less of VP's like development life cycle, and then I would like look at the cards occasionally after that, but was not like testing and giving, I think, actionable useful feedback. I guess to me, it did feel like a set. It did feel like there was a lot of times when talking with Dev of where like the set very much felt like it was it felt like it was very targeted at helping out specific archetypes and specific playstyles in a way that like as a playtester I actually enjoyed quite a bit, as someone who likes to always like the thing a lot of my feedback often ends up being it, or what often was in playtesting, was like, this is too just generically good. Like, why are we making Reg Crim, Reg Anarch? Like, why are they getting this card? Was like probably my most common feedback on a lot of stuff. And so like I liked the push away. I think it made some things really challenging, because like if you start from the problem statement of, oh, we need to make a card for X, and actually like the whatchamacallit, Stowaway, I think, is an example of this, where it was like, if we want to make a card for Ari, like, it was actually pretty excruciating, as someone who really
Yeah,
like had a lot of thoughts about that. Um, but that's so, like, it has its pluses and minuses, and honestly, like, it's probably good that it's not the normal way sets are done. But I actually think that Vantage Point does some very cool stuff for a set as a whole. So
yeah. So, do we want to try and pull a live caller now? Are we set up for
yeah,
this?
I
Do it.
think we're
All
set
right.
up for this. Let me give our first caller their thing, and then see if I can.
So we're hoping we can get
Jai. Yeah, you should be able to.
the people's champion.
Yeah, the people's. All right. So we have Jai, the people's champion. Could
Here we
you
go again.
say quickly? Well, I guess I just had you introduce yourself. I'll have you do a 10-second introduction on yourself, and then let's have you do your first question first, and we can talk about that one.
Sure, all right. What up, everyone? I'm Jai. Some people call me the people's champion. I've got no idea what they're talking about, and that's all I'm gonna say about that.
And then
Good to have you on.
yeah, it's great to have you.
Yeah.
And
so I just go straight to my first question.
yeah.
Okay. So my first question is, this is like more so directed to Safer, but I guess Jeff might have some insight on this as well. Is that I observed during the scoop season for Vantage Point that most of the discussion surrounding the scoops that were getting revealed was around the interaction with Deep Dive, right? So we have cards like Event Horizon, Flagship, Baker, and then even on like release day, Caveat Emptor as well, that kind of stuff. So I was discussing this throughout the season, and someone, I think it was Cobra Bubbles, noted to me that what I was probably observing was that most of the set was designed with Deep Dive in mind, during a time where Dive was still legal during the Elevation format. Of course, it got banned like midway through. So my actual question is, how much of Deep Dive's unbanned decision was predicated on the fact that you spend so much time designing the set with this card in mind, and what happens if we don't unban it? Is it like taking away a pillar of a format, and we don't know what happens if like we remove one of these foundational cards?
Mm-hmm. So
I will just say, from my memory,
go first.
I think we almost all of Vantage Point was play tested with it banned. Like, I don't remember playtesting a single game of it with it legal, but maybe I'm misremembering. But sorry, Safer, I'll let you ask the actual designer talk about that.
I mean, I actually don't remember when Deep Dive was banned in testing.
Or maybe I wasn't supposed to say that.
Was.
Apologies.
No, I don't mind. So yeah, like, playtest bans are very different, I should say, than release bans. So the dev team basically wants to create a testing environment that will make for the best sets possible. That is very different than making a ban list to make the meta as healthy as possible. And so, we designed all of Elevation without Hoshiko in the pool, and like, we play tested all of Elevation without Hoshiko because we didn't want Hoshiko's raw strength to bias how people were viewing the strength of these individual like Anarch cards. So it's kind of the same thing with Deep Dive. We knew that Deep Dive was a really strong card, and we wanted to ban it in testing, just purely off of the premise of, independent of what happens in the meta, we don't want to be building cards around the fact that Deep Dive is a thing. One of the key things that I kind of identified early on in Elevation's meta was that corps were very frequently losing on centrals. This was really, really early on I was just jamming a whole bunch of HB games because everyone was saying like HB is dead, and knowing that we were working on Vantage Point and knew that we needed to like try to solve specific things for HB, I went and I just played a whole bunch of HB. And what I found consistently was that I was losing on Centrals and I was losing to Hermes more than anything else. Because the tempo that I lost from a Hermes even bounce on the ice was usually enough to mean that like I would not have the time to push out and actually win the game. So now knowing that, okay, corps are very much like identifying this thing of corps are losing on Centrals, we can now go and say like, let's in our testing environment ban deep dive from playtesting so that this like very, very powerful card doesn't warp like what we end up like our balancing of things. Now, that being said, yes, a lot of these tools were built on the premise of corp like reinforcing corp central pressure and allowing corps to kind of fight back against centrals and not just always lose on centrals. So what I think that people are picking up on and noticing here is that like deep dive happens to be a really good central pressure card. We put in tools to make it so that corps, could defend and not just always lose on centrals. And so like they're unrelated and they're more high level. So it's not specifically about deep dive. It was just about central pressure. And then
so it's more like deep dive as deep dive could be a placeholder for any centrals pressure card, but whatever the card is, it's acting more like shall we say, like a counterweight against the core defensive cards that you're getting. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. And so what that did down the pipeline is say that like once SBT started their testing, they could actually have the option of choosing to unban deep dive. Whereas before, it was just not an option at all.
All right. Yeah. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Cool. I think we have time for your second take as well, if you'd like.
Yes. Yeah. So my second question is a bit shorter. So basically, the IDs in Vantage Point seem to be divided into two camps or categories. So first is Hiram and Editorial Division. They both released with like packages of cards that are designed with them in mind. So Hiram, of course, is like the stealth hardware package with Methuselah, etc., and Editorial with the Bad Pup and Grey Ops stuff. And then meanwhile, on the flip side of the coin, so Vic and Malays U both are like, here's a card. The card has a particular value proposition. And that's all the support you're getting, you figure it out. Right. So these like quite two contrasting design philosophies for these two types of identities. And I was wondering, was this a deliberate decision? And if so, what motivated it?
This is an interesting question. I think that there are some underlying assumptions here that are very understandable, but I need to like first address those to actually answer this question. The key primary thing that I'm pointing out that I want to point out and bring people's attention to is that game design is really, really hard. And you can set out to try to accomplish something, and the way that you are going to like validate if you accomplish that or not is through playtesting. And it might take a variable amount of time before you figure out if that works or not. So yes, a lot of the things that we do are deliberate, but I don't know if you're actually like trying to make this assertion, Jai, or not, but it almost in your question feels like you're saying like when the set was designed from its very first iteration, was all of this stuff kind of planned out? And the truth of the matter is that it's always going to be messier and dirtier, where some of the stuff like Vic was in the original concept. Like Vic was the very first identity, was the very first card of the set, and it only changed with like a single number change. since the V0 of it. Meanwhile, Milius U was a redesign because the initial concept that we had for Jinteki did not work. And you can actually see some of the essences of the original Jinteki concept from like Eska and what's the other card? Oh, Unleash. Like
I see.
we were playing around with these different ideas. Didn't work out. Bad idea. You only find out through playtesting and getting it. And so, a month or two into playtesting, we had to pivot to something else. And then that resulted in like a really awesome, cool idea in Milius U, and like one of my favorite.
Oop. Did I lose both of you for a second? Oh no. Oh no. Apologies, everyone. I have no idea what's happening. That's unfortunate. Well, Solomir, what the heck? Oh boy. Discord, what are you doing to me? Okay, so apologies everyone. I'm attempting to rejoin.
Hello.
Oh, and I'm back.
Hello.
All right, apologies.
Yes.
Oh, maybe we all. Might have been all of us.
Okay. It looks like maybe Discord's having some fun times with me.
Yeah, I think Discord dropped for like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But yeah, Safer, you were talking about like how Malay's original design got transplanted into Eska and Unleash. That was, I think, the last thing.
Okay, that's the last thing. Okay. So yeah, you see some of these threads kind of still appear in the faction as a result, because some of the stuff did work and was in line with our original vision. But we kept the pieces that did work and then completely reworked the things that weren't working. And so the result is like this really cool identity that's awesome. But it's not like it was there from the very beginning. And we kind of try to design cards to fit the rest of the shape of the set that is working. So, if there's a handful of cards that do make sense, like Unleash and Eska, I'm trying to remember like what other cards would have been like early in, like locked in and been like, this is good to go, we shouldn't mess with this card. You're more likely to get something that, is more flexible, and can like make more sense and like can fit in some of these very specific pieces, but then also use other tools from other sets.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then conversely, like the Shaper and NBN packages, by definition, needed to be more fleshed out.
And yeah, we're like editorial division, the concept of it, at least like the concept for the faction and what its faction was going to try to achieve, that one kind of did pan out. And we also know that it needed more support because it didn't, VIP, we knew had inherent tag support through the SEB package that we, that's fairly low influence. So we knew that we didn't need to print as much cards. We also know that it's going to be fairly easy to print tag-based cards in Criminal in the future. Whereas Bad Publicity is a much more... Bad Publicity is a really powerful swingy mechanic. So it's kind of hard to like print it on a lot of corp cards.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's good enough for me. Thank
All right.
you.
Thanks, Jai.
Thank you for coming on.
Do you have, if you want to give anyone a shout out or something for 5 or 10 seconds, you got it. But
Well, I mean, shout out to Safer specifically. I mean, I haven't listened to the most recent King's Court podcast, but I think one of the questions I was planning to ask, I'm pretty sure was covered there already, and it probably involves the words R plus died for this. So I'm looking forward to listening to that. All right. Thanks,
All
Gavin.
right. Thanks, Jack. All right. And we're going to get Meathir on also for their question. Hello. You mentioned that you can't talk a bunch, so if you want, we can go right into your question.
Oh god, I just realized I'm listening to the podcast and in the call, so it's obviously behind me. Okay, no, sorry, my bad. Hey, I'm Meathir, Scrubs player, helped with the Scrubs of general bad take haver. That's the introduction. I'm just gonna go straight into it, which is so I was asking about because it's been clear from the start that VP was designed with sort of rotation in mind, plugging holes that were clearly in the standard format. State of Corpse, you mentioned even on the podcast right now, central defense, things like that. I'm just curious, whenabouts did the cards and the VP ban list get locked in? Because late elevation meta, I would say, was actually corpse-sided. Even you could argue, even as far as when Bankar and Deep Dive got banned, you could argue it was corpse-sided, and it was mostly just value IDs were a bit too strong. But definitely, around Worlds into after post Worlds, Corpse was starting to really suddenly win. And I don't know if you've seen very very recent tournaments right before the new set came out. It was kind of dire. So I'm just curious, whenabouts did cards get locked in? Whenabouts did the bandits get locked in? And how do you feel about the set in relation to the fact that it's pretty obviously corpse-sided set? I'm not saying runners didn't get tools. I'm just I think power level rise, it was definitely clear that corpse were getting more than runners in this set. That's fine. I'm happy with that. But how do you feel about the set as a whole in relation to the fact that we're technically giving corpse more when technically we were already in a corp meta, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, Safer can talk about the actual design timelines and considerations. I actually wanted to have this take so I could talk about the we've actually been in a court meta this whole time. And I will admit to being the person who basically never calls something a court meta, even when corps have 60% win rates. And I think I'm not going to try and be as well. Actually, no. I will say the Worlds meta was not a court meta. Yes, corps had a higher win rate at Worlds, but a lot of that was just about exploiting people being under-practiced against slightly orthogonal strategies that hadn't been revealed before. And if you watched all of the elevation, from my mind, and I haven't actually done the systematic deep dive, but from my perspective, what we saw for basically the entire elevation standard was a corp would do well at one event, and then by the next event, it was no longer good enough to beat runners with reliability, and so the corp that was doing well was just something that it had to have a new trick. It wasn't a stronger deck necessarily, it was just a deck that had a new trick, or a different deck trick kind of thing. And so the corp high win rate was more about players runner skill being insufficient to make up for the perfectly the ideal skilled Netrunner players having an even balance match. And so from my perspective, what I would want when I want the design team of Netrunner to be thinking about is, hey, if I have two Netrunner players at the top of their game, it should be an even game, maybe 55-45 corp runner or something. But that should be the case of the runner making the correct decisions that they can make with hidden information still obviously in play. And I felt basically all of the elevation meta, with maybe the exception of the Scrobs, Metro Response, Fast Advance, combo-y ob that was unlocked with some of the bans post-Worlds. That's the only deck and slice of the whole elevation meta that to me has felt like corps are leading on the agent, not needing to just top deck and hope that their opponent makes a mistake to win a game, And that to me is what it felt like Vantage Point is trying to address is is Corps having to rely on misplays to make wins, and I think that's just been kind of like a frustrating thing as a core player, to feel like that's what the card pool is supporting. But I'll let Safer tackle the actual question, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I agree with pretty much everything you said there, Jeff. But I think like I want to add to the win rates conversation a little bit, because I think win rates are just a very like it's like the first order stat to look at, but there's so much nuance that gets lost within win rates, especially for like a specific tournament or a specific meta. So I think that corp win rates are naturally going to be up over the like corp win rates are naturally going to be up after every single like ban list, because the Netrunner is an asymmetric game, and one of the corp's advantages is a gap in information. And as a result, um, when even if a ban list hits something on the corpse side, because the corpse then need to switch up, it could increase the win rate of corpse theoretically. So like that's not to discredit the original premise where like, hey, corp win rates are up and VP has a whole lot of corp like pushed things. Like, is that going to create problems? That's not to discredit it. It's just that like I feel like the conversation should maybe gear away specifically from like win rates and focus on more specific nuances and more specific, not even play patterns, but like things that have developed as metas go on. So one of the things that I think is really interesting about the elevation standard meta is that Bankar was incredibly dominant for until it got banned. And then after Bankar got banned, it took people a little bit to figure out, but then people started iterating on dolls. And you had Moosely Hot dolls, and then you had Sable dolls, and then we finally got Hosh dolls and Essa dolls. And dolls basically became the new Bankar. And so all of that, getting back to your original question around timeline, all of that development is happening as VP is getting like locked in, not just designed. Like, oh, is this influence correct at 3 or 2? Like, we do not have the time to make sweeping changes to cards. I can go into a lot more detail at some other point in some capacity about like what does locked in mean and what does the time for all these things mean. But just know that as things are progressing, as a set progresses, like we are less likely to be able to make changes because the art is getting finalized and is coming in. When let's say that we're 2 months away from a dev deadline, we might have to start considering we probably cannot change something like a connection, right? We can't change it from a connection to something else because that would be entirely different artwork. So there's these like really minor things. Something like unique could matter for a resource, but it could be completely irrelevant for something like an ice. Like these are the kinds of constraints that we're dealing with as time goes on. So by the time that continental season is ending, we are way past the point of being able to make reactive changes beyond, hey, numbers changes.
Yeah. Basically, you can change the number in the top left corner at that point, and that was about it. I remember being at Worlds, and we were looking at proofs of cards, kind of thing. So it was
Yes.
Well,
I mean,
most of the set was kind of developed under like Dive and Bankar. Then that means, and like it was only. I find the dolls ban interesting then because that happened probably after. I assume most, if not all, cards were finalized then, which I find
Yep.
really interesting. I guess that's part of why you banned it, because I was expecting AI tech in VP. I'm kind of surprised there isn't any AI tech. But I guess that kind of explains it to some degree, because Stoles
I
were
mean-
definitely a layer addition to the meta, and
Yeah, if I could go back with perfect hindsight.
yeah. You put in wraparound or something, just like one card.
Well, I think Samak
or something.
Samoon did like a very good job. But
The map does
that
really
is-
good, but it's only good for the factions that can make use of both sides of its text, if that makes sense, right?
it is one piece, and you need more than one piece, right? Like Hammer wasn't doing enough, even though it's
I
designed to
agree
be
with
anti-AI attack. So like
I
we needed things that
I do
didn't
worry.
also
Oh, sorry.
care about sides.
Go ahead. I do worry.
So-
I kind of over focused on win rate when I was more looking at like general vibes of how happy you are with the set. With hindsight is kind of what I was more asking. I'm sorry, I kind of biased the question towards win rate. That's not really what I care about, because I kind of mostly agree that corps were. The way you guys put it, where it's like most corps were inconsistent, right? Except for like, I would say AuCo was like the most consistent deck of the format, and outside of that, most and like certain
Yeah.
variants before Cyber Sand got banned because he deserved it.
AuCo is an interesting one, because I think I'm not actually, I won't speak for Safer, though. We've talked about this of like, because we played it, like Snare Bears were huge fans of AuCo and got really, really good at beating AuCo internally. Like the Sable AuCo matchup internally was at least 60% Sable, maybe higher.
I remember saying the same thing. I don't know if you saw the recent survey article where it said like Sable was 49% into AuCo, and I was like, huh, I feel like if you play well, it's 6-4 in Sable's favor.
Yeah,
so I would not
I think
imagine
it's like 70-30. Like,
yeah,
honestly,
it was like,
it was...
I mean, like when I was playing it with, I remember sitting down and testing it against AnalyzeChris, and this was like when Sting was legal, and being like, oh my goodness, the only card that gets me out of this is if Chris hits a random Sting, and otherwise I'm just dead on board. Like 3 consecutive games in a row by turn 5, I was just like, I've been destroyed by Sable so quickly. And then there'd be a game where I got ahead and like it exploded. So it was like, yeah, I think 60 somewhere to the 60 to 70% win rate for Sable for me is like what that matchup truly was. But it was such a hard match. Like you actually had to grind and get a lot of knowledge and get that. And
the thing about that matchup is that if Sable makes one mistake and your win rate goes from 60 to 40, like you lose so much.
Yes.
Yeah.
So which is why I don't blame people for losing that matchup, even if it is technically favored. It's because you have to basically play perfect the whole game. But if you do, you almost guaranteed win.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I'm pretty happy with that answer. I've gotten why I wanted out of the question. There is one other question I have that's completely unrelated and it's a little shorter.
So I think we have a couple of other questions I want to try and hit before we wrap up the show.
Yeah, no,
so hold on to them for next week, and thanks so much for coming on. So
yeah, thanks for having me. I'm sorry that the recording was scuffed as shit. I tried using my mic and it came out quieter. I don't know why that happened.
Honestly, it's not that your recording is bad. It's literally I've had zero time to even test if it was something I could do live today. So no, thank you for giving it a shot. I will do my best for next time.
Yeah.
So thanks. And do you have any 5 or 10 seconds of plugs that you want to do?
Scrubs, go Scrubs. Yeah, that's all I gotta say. Have a nice day.
I also quickly say it's not on our schedule, so we probably won't give this a full answer. But it came up at sort of as we were answering that last one, and then John Delaney in the chat also asking, how do you make the game fun for people that can't grind, the AuCo Sable matchup where it goes from like a 30-70 in Sable's against Sable to a 70-30 for Sable. Like you don't have the time or you don't have that skill. Like how can you still make sure that Netrunner is fun? And like how does maybe design think about that? Because I think it's like probably not desirable to have a matchup be that polarized. But
yeah, I mean, this is something that I think about a lot for myself, and I think it just comes down to some more like design philosophy stuff where you want to be putting things in the right direction and not necessarily as worried about like specific details. So what I mean by that is that I'm going to use economic bounce back. It's one of my favorite examples because it's really clear and easy, but the game is better and more fun and more dynamic when if the corps are low on credits, they need a couple of turns of recovery before they can really start to threaten things again. If the corp just goes down to 1 credit and then goes credit, extract, and now all of a sudden they can res all of their ice again, the game is not as fun, and that's true across all skill levels. I think that when people are like frustrated playing against AuCo, I think that there's 2 things that go into it. I think one is that it just happens a lot because the deck is good and it has traction. And to be honest, I think it's fun to play. Then you'll run into it more. So it gets more frustrating to like lose into it consistently. The other thing that I think is really big for this is like, well, okay, one thing that's maybe not apparent is like you might be playing into players that are putting in a lot of time and playing really well. So if you're trying out like you're not necessarily a great runner and you're trying out a new deck for the first time that you built yourself and might not have enough economy in it in general, are you playing into a player that is trying to build their own AuCo list from scratch and also might not have enough economy in it? That's what happens in playtest a lot.
Yeah,
because that's what playtest is all about, is exploring and trying to figure this stuff out. And like, so yeah, like, I guess to actually answer the question of like, okay, how do I make the game fun is through these like general principles of like making sure the games can be dynamic and all this other stuff. But like, if I was going to give you advice, it would be like, go net deck a runner deck that like has good fundamentals and people are saying is good into it. So like the Sable list, and then I don't know, adjust your expectations on like when you're playing into someone, because if I play into, I'm just going to use Rotom Appliance as an example here, and I'm playing a runner deck that I haven't played before, and Rotom is playing PD, I should not expect to win that game. Doesn't matter what the like, it doesn't matter if my matchup favored or not.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think like John, I would actually love to come back to that question another time with a little bit more time for it, but hopefully that's at least a start of an answer for you. And I definitely have some thoughts, but I want to. I liked Solomir's question because I think we can answer it. Well, we can answer part of it quickly, and then probably another part we might have to deflect on, and then we'll do a final wrap up story because we're a little late, so we're gonna go a little bit late today. But Solomir's question was, am I the baddie for liking Shackleton Grid, or is the runner a crybaby?
I read this and I just started laughing out loud. Amazing take. Jeff, you go first.
I mean, I think the runner's a little bit of a crybaby. I don't know. I've been trying to listen to some Shackleton Grid takes, and I just kind of can't ever imagine wanting to slot this card on its, like, in any deck. Like, if I'm a bad publicity deck, and I'm like, ha, here's my Shackleton Grid, you're not going to get to use that bad pub you so wanted to use. As the runner, it's like, okay, well, maybe if I can see a situation where that makes a difference, but like, it's just not going to get us. I don't feel like it's going to do something. And I think looking at it as a safety valve for stealth, I'm not, again, this is the numbers on Shackleton Grid were like not a thing I play tested, so I can't speak to it from a experience of like being in the room and being in these conversations. I'm just going to say from my experience as a playtester and as a player, that like, it doesn't seem like that's what that card is there for. It's just kind of there to be an enticing like I think it asks interesting questions, and like if I'm wrong, I think we'll find something out. There'll be some deck that's doing something pretty cool, and that's exciting to me. But like I look at the card and like I don't think this is a what I would call a release valve for stealth. I don't think it's what I would call a release valve for anything. It's just it's an interesting piece you gotta try and find a use for. I think like there haven't been that many cards like that in NSG era, and so people want to be like, okay, here's definitely the role this card was trying to do. I just don't feel like that's actually what's going on with Shackleton.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know if I can get away with saying runners are babies. Like I don't know if I in my position can truly say that wholeheartedly and earnestly. But I do think that one, I think strong reactions from for cards like this is within like what I was expecting. There's always going to be stuff like this. Sometimes we do put big numbers on cards just because we know that it's going to make it more exciting and appealing to people. Like if this number said like 2 meat damage, for example, it might be a quote unquote better card because the runner is more likely to like take damage, and maybe that makes it a better grinder card or whatever. I don't know. It's not a better card, but there's a lot of instances where we will just kind of jack up the numbers on like a card that we otherwise think is like weak and niche, because it just makes the card more appealing to general players, and gets people more excited about cards. And in terms of stealth cards versus other things, like obviously the theme here isn't bad publicity, and Wayland having some like extreme punishment for giving the runner bad publicity and them using bad publicity. But this thing does say once per turn, and so if you just take 4 meat damage, like it's fine. Like I think that stealth decks can deal with this just fine by just having cards in hand. If you're a stealth deck and you're a shaper deck, maybe you have Nuka. Maybe you started your turn with 5 cards in hand. Maybe you click Nuka first and you're in 8 cards in hand. Like there's a natural way. You don't even need Nuka. Like you can just go draw for clicks 1 and 2, have 7 cards in hand, and then run this thing and still use your credits. Like there's so many natural ways that don't require special tech or anything else for you to deal with this kind of effect that not concerned about it being a hosing to stealth.
Very cool. Do you want to do the last topic we were gonna do, or do you want to call it here?
I think we could do it.
Okay.
I think we can do it.
All right. Well, so yeah, I have to step away for just a minute, but I will maybe hand you the floor. Well, because this is
okay.
the Tributary story, right? Was the thing?
Yes. I'm just in charge of stream now.
Fantastic.
I have the power. I don't have the controls, but I do have the power. So Coldlava asked, can we get the full Tributary story? And to that, I just gave it a green check mark and went, yep, you got it. So Tributary was a card that was banned. I think it was the fastest ban maybe in NSG history. And Tributary is an interesting tale. I actually had to go back and look at the exact versions for RWR to exactly remember what happened. But Tributary, of course, is a card concept that is notoriously bad in Netrunner history, which is ice moving. There's a large number of movement ice from Jinteki that are just stone cold unplayable. And we wanted to make something that was actually good and like not overbearing. We didn't want overbearing, but we wanted something that was actually playable. And the earliest versions of this card were really bad. We tried a lot of different things, and this card had the same numbers, wasn't unique, mind you, and the first sub didn't draw. So the first sub did whatever it does currently. It's been a very long time since I've looked at the text, but it didn't draw a card. And Tributary, without that draw on it, was incredibly weak throughout all of its history and playtesting. Fast forward to 2 versions before the dev deadline, we're like, is there anything we can do to make this card good? Like, just something. We got to give it something. And I went, can we put draw on that first sub, so that way, like, you're more likely to be able to actually fire the installing a piece of ice, because otherwise you have to hold a piece of ice. You're already probably holding one for like Tattoo Bola, so like people kind of know what's going on already. Like, it's just a lot of requirements on an already like positional ice that doesn't do much on its own and wants other ice being there. So we added the draw, and all of a sudden the card became good. But at that point, it also wasn't unique. So we had a lot of things going on for RWR and a lot of different things pulling at our attention. Crew, I believe at the time of the Tributary nerf, was not a card. Like, the card concept got introduced the same version that Tributary got the draw on it, if I remember exactly correctly. So we had a lot of things that we needed to do to get the set in order. And so some of our attention was very divided. Now, Tributary started to perform very well in playtesting, but the best that we could tell, because a lot of Shaper cards were also changing at the last minute, so a lot of testing was being done on Shaper, which of course has some of the best ways of dealing with Tributary. So Tributary seemed to be really annoying, but in part because you could have multiple of them. So the version to last, we put unique on it. Things seemed to be better. It seemed to be strong, but we weren't. It seemed like it was in the realm of being okay, maybe good enough to ship. The very last version, what we did is we increased the influence, because we're like, oh, this thing is actually pretty good now. We don't want this necessarily being everywhere. We want this to be like a Jinteki thing. And then we released the card. And of course, as everyone knows, the card turned out to be better than we were expecting and better than it seemed even in playtesting. So this was a case of a lot of things needing to kind of come together at the last minute. The playtest environment and the biases for like needing to figure things out at the last minute, meaning that the matchups kind of hid how good the card was against certain factions like Criminal. And yeah, like there's a lot of lessons and interesting lessons that like I learned, because RWR was my first set within NSG. So I was coming back into the game and getting readjusted and, trying to take all of my game design lessons from many, many years into working on like specifically like Netrunner, which is its own version of design things that you need to do well and to make the game well. So that is the story. And because Jeff is not back,
I am.
We're gonna
just sat down.
Oh, Jeff is back. Okay, excellent.
I was gonna say, yeah, that does match my memory well, and I do think people blaming Tributary on Shapers is honestly fair. Though I will say, I don't think Trickshot was finalized either. I think Trickshot, that last release of RWR was wild for how many cards we were trying to finish all at the same time.
Yeah,
and it's also, I will say, as a playtester, I personally when Safer was like, oh, Tributary wasn't good for most of testing. A way to think about this, for people to think about in context, is okay, imagine you're playing Elevation Standard, you're playing Elevation Standard right now, and you have Kesselroyd like you have, I don't know, a Castleroid, or I'm trying to think of what's like maybe like the weakest ice in the format right now.
Castleroid is actually like playable though, and you would actually put it in your
Yeah,
deck. Like
yeah. I'm trying
Tributary
to think what's the
before
like.
was not worth
It's
including in the deck.
yeah. I was trying to. It's like it's worse than a Karuna. It's like a Diviner, like a card you just never. It's like, okay, yes, this card technically does something, but it doesn't actually do anything. So why would I put this in? And so it's like, oh, that card has been like that. You've seen like six. You've been playing as many games as you can, and that card has been like you've seen like three different versions of that same card. That subroutine keeps changing, um, but it's like it doesn't do anything. It never does. It's never done anything in any version. And then they're like, oh, we'll make this one small change, and also here's, you know, like at the last second, you're like, okay, yeah, this card that has been unplayable for 6, 8 months, maybe I forget how long, like almost a year at that point. Okay, it's getting this small nerf. It's really hard to like do the reset and look at like, okay, how good is this in the whole, like as an entirely brand new card every time, just because you've got all of this baggage of this card being unplayable, and it's like, oh no, this new context of a couple extra lines has changed how the whole card works. So
I mean, the other piece to that was that like RWR playtesting had like an order of magnitude fewer playtesters than what we like ramped into for like elevation testing. Like we also, I think within like the first 2 weeks of elevation testing, we had more game reports than we did for all of RWR.
yeah,
Like there was a lot of improvements to kind of be made across the board, and I don't know, some of the stuff like can get missed, but also honestly, adding draw to this ice was it cannot be understated how much of a difference this card is when
yeah,
if you cut the you may draw one card line.
yeah. It's why like
You cut this, the card is
if
not playable.
you could like if you want to have fun, like let your opponent know this. Bring to your next casual meetup, what right? Say I'm playing Tributary. I'm gonna take draw off of this, and like within 3 games, you'll be like, oh my goodness, I need to cut this card from my deck. Like so, it is so often a subroutine does the first subroutine does nothing. So it's so wild how
Yeah.
like it just often becomes an ice that does nothing for most of the game instead of one of the most powerful ice ever, like the fastest ban I think ever, but definitely the fastest NSGs ever, which is kind of crazy. Um, but
Yeah.
I think we do gotta wrap it up. I think generally I will try it. We should try and have a little like fun thing we're looking forward to for the upcoming week. Though I'm just gonna say Slay the Spire 2 for myself, and then mute myself and let Safer do an actual wrap up.
Vantage Point is out, and that's going to be my weekend. Vantage Point is great. I have so many deck ideas. That's all I'm doing with my life.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. We will be live, ideally, actually at 7:30 or a little bit before, so that people can get their questions in if they want to call in for live stuff. I will make sure to have a way to play pre-recorded questions if this time does not work out for you for next week. I will say we will probably try and prioritize recorded questions because that's more fun than just hearing Safer and I talk for an hour. But yeah, hope everyone enjoyed this. Please, if you have any thoughts on this format or feedback, please leave them in the comments. And thank you all for tuning in. And go enjoy the Metropole Grid.